welcome back. This segment brought to you by Knuckle Junkies. I love that name. Knuckle Junkies, knucklejunkies.com. They're always at the Shamrock fights. They really have their pulse on, the whole picture of MMA as well as the local scene.
Absolutely. They do a great job. Knucklejunkies.com. If you haven't checked them out, check them out. They do a great job. They cover mixed martial arts in the local scene of St. Louis, Missouri.
It's a lot of fun, and they've sponsored this segment. That means we only have one segment, our last segment, that's not sponsored.
Right.
Hit us up, guys. We want to throw your name out. Hit Squad at 101sports.com. Twitter is at HitSquad101ESPN. We're going to start with some questions from the Knuckle Junkies. As I say, they got their finger on the pulse of MMA, and they ask, how would Bellator champs Michael Chandler and Ben Askren stack up against their counterparts in the UFC?
That's a great question, and I got to tell you something. I've said this on numerous occasions. I think Michael Chandler is the best 155er in the world. You said that. Okay, I've said this on numerous occasions. The guy he's tremendous. I think he beats Vincent Henderson. I also think he beats Anthony Pettis, and those are the two top 155ers right now. I think he would actually dominate against Pettis because of his wrestling pedigree. I think that with Ben Askren, it's hard to say that how he would do, but I'll say this is, one thing about Ben Askren is he says, listen, I'm going to out-wrestle you until you can stop me. It's called mixed martial arts. He's laying on everybody. He's beating him in 3-round decisions. Do I think he could do that in UFC? No, I really don't. I don't think he could actually go out there and dominate the way he's dominating in Bellator right now. I think that with that being said, he's probably the best wrestler right now in the 170 division, including George St. Pierre. And I tell you something, but do I think that he would go out and dominate? No, I do not. I think that he would actually have a big trouble stepping up in competition. Michael Chandler, yes, he would dominate the 155 division.
The thing that interests me, and I think we've all looked at this, and I'm sure the UFC is trying to wipe those clean, or they don't want the geeks working on the computers. I would have liked to have seen when Strikeforce when it ended, how those fighters did against UFC. Now, I'm sure UFC doesn't want that because they don't want, to say, oh, the Strikeforce guys, 175% of the time they fight a UFC guy. That's going to be like, well, that was a better league. But I think it's only time before, and now I would say Bellator, and, they're getting the pay-per-view. They're going to start to, I think, hopefully, ideally, I think it's good for competition, get some momentum behind them. And right now I feel like Bellator, it is kind of a second-tier league. There's the UFC, then Bellator. I feel like they get a lot of these older guys that, are still big names that people are interested in, but they're not on the up. I have a feeling, and it's going to happen within our lifetime, that they will find someone who seems to have an axe to grind against the UFC, who just doesn't want to be in the UFC. And they need a good young champ to come up, and then that's where it'll all start. It'll start with the Brock Lesnar and Fedor. Well, and you're getting, and I think it's good for the sport because you're getting a champ in this league against a champ in this league, and people want to see that fight. And later, Dana White came out and said that there was works to make a Fedor-Lesnar fight when that was hot.
Right, but you also can say this. They were just tried it with Eddie Alvarez who was going to come over to the UFC. But there wouldn't have been as much because Eddie just lost to Michael Chandler. Right. Michael Chandler was with Bellator at the time. But Hector Lombard, it was supposed to be this huge, big stud over in Bellator. Well, he came back over, and he hasn't been doing very well in the UFC.
Right.
And he was a dominant, and dominating everybody in the Bellator. You can say it what it is, man. At the end of the day, the UFC is a premier league, and they're also the premier. They know how to promote.
Right.
And they know how to build fights
the marketing's,
up.
yeah.
So their marketing is unbelievable.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that they're second-tier fighters in Bellator because there are some that I think that would actually compete in mixed martial arts like a Michael Chandler, or in the UFC like Michael Chandler.
But I would, to just kind of follow up what you're saying, probably 90% of the Bellator guys would probably want to make it to the UFC.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
They're making more money, number one.
Yep, it is.
That's to make the world go round. But and they get so much more sponsorship dollars.
But I still think that at some point someone's going to have an axe to grind and want to be the Bellator champ and say I'm better than the UFC guy. That'll be time will tell. Now this is a good one for you on the coaching side of things. How does a coach know when it's time for an athlete to turn pro?
Great.
Yeah, that's a really good question from the Knuckle Junkies.
And I can say this twofold. There's a lot of guys out there that rush into the pros. And you know what? And it's one of my biggest pet peeves is, I got to go pro, I got to go pro, I got to go pro, I got to go pro. You're going to be lucky to be making $400 and $400 in your pro debut, so you're making $800. It's brutal. And once you go there, there's no going back. No going back, okay? My recommendation is you're going to go out there and get a bunch of tough amateur mixed martial arts fights. Then you turn around and get some amateur boxing and get some amateur kickboxing. And a lot of guys have problems with just stepping in the cage and getting a bunch of eyeballs on them, or stepping in the boxing ring or the kickboxing ring. Get as many amateur fights as you can get, and then go for it. Okay, and a lot of guys will say, well, I want to fight at 205, and then when I turn pro, I want to go to 185. No, get your fights, if you really want to go pro, get your fights at 185 in the amateur ranks and see how well you're going to stack up. Don't go work backwards. To answer that whole question is when do you know to be pro? Everybody's different. Each athlete's different. Some guys, have, ice water in their veins. Some guys really don't, you can't do it. I can give you probably 20 examples that say guys that turn pro and wish, man, damn, I wish I would have had some more amateur fights and I should have learned this a little bit more. But you know what? You got to surround yourself with 3 good people that are going to say, okay, yes, this is why I think you should. This is why I think you shouldn't turn pro. And you know what? It's the old Ben Franklin. What's good? Pros and cons.
List them out. Okay. So would you say most fighters think, in hindsight, I might have should have been an amateur a little longer? Not necessarily.
Each
is different.
Each is their own.
I got you. Well, our next question coming from the Knuckle Junkies: which of the fighting disciplines is most effective in the amateur ranks?
Wrestling.
I was going to say wrestling.
Absolutely, wrestling.
How you dictate the fight.
No matter what, it's just the wrestling's going to dominate because you're going to be able to dictate the fight. If you're a really good striker and you're a wrestler, someone like Michael Chandler right now or Tyron Woodley, you know what? They can keep the fight standing and they're going to go to knock you out. Wrestling's always going to 90% of the time is going to dictate the fight at where it wants to be. Now, the most feared discipline out there is a striking. Everyone's always scared to get knocked out. There's always with being a really good striker, you always have that chance of a one-hitter quitter.
I like it. Well, it's actually a 2-part question, and the following would be in the pros.
Absolutely, same thing.
Same thing. It doesn't matter, doesn't change. It's the wrestling that dictates the fight. Where does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fall in there? Second to strike, or a second after wrestling?
There's been so many times where the jiu-jitsu player dominated everything. There was a time where the striker dominated everything, and nowadays it just seems like that the wrestlers are just so submission defense, and then you have the strikers that you got to get through the strikes to get the takedown. So, man, I mean, jiu-jitsu I definitely think is in the top 3. I can't say that it's the number 2 or the number 3.
I think in the beginning, when it was just the UFC,
right,
it was the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seemed to dominate. But now that they, like you said, have gotten so skilled in stopping the submissions that if you're going to drive the fight, it'll be wrestling that does it.
Absolutely.
And our final question from the Knuckle Junkies. Again, a great website, knucklejunkies.com, for all your MMA, local, national. It's just fabulous. And this is our final question. Have the UFC changed from pure fighters / martial artists competing at a high level to athletes with a game plan?
Well, it's going to continue to evolve at all times. I mean, and no matter what the athlete, as long as he goes out with a smart game plan and has learned all the disciplines, they're going to dominate. And this is what the mixed martial arts has turned into, man. This has turned into all these great athletes that know how to fight. I say this on numerous occasions over and over and over. These are athletes that know how to fight, not just straight martial artists anymore. I mean, these are guys that are going out and they're great athletes that get into mixed martial arts.
Yep.
They're athletes that get into martial arts of a jiu-jitsu players, or they get into MMA, or they get into kickboxing. My suggestion to all the kids out there is to get into everything at the beginning. And you know what? Get in. Go try baseball, softball, basketball, baseball. Anything you're going to do as a boy or girl, try everything as an athlete and just go out and enjoy it and make mixed martial arts a part of your lifestyle.
And I think this is just the natural progression with the way that all pro sports go. I think you just see the guys get bigger, faster, stronger, as it always happens. You know, Yogi Berra won the MVP like 2 or 3 years, I think. The guy's like 5'8", 100, you know. And I just think in this day and age, he wouldn't be, he wouldn't be competing out there. And this is the second part of the question. Is this a good thing?
Yes, I actually do. And no matter what, it's a good thing because the athlete is continuing to get bigger, faster, and stronger. Now, and with that being said, yes, it is a great thing.
I think so.
But you're going to get a lot of the fights that are the McDonald's fights. I hope it doesn't turn into boxing, if you lose one and you're done, I mean, you got to, this is what I think that it has helped mixed martial arts along the way, is they've got guys that go out and take chances and win fights and dominate fights and finish fights. So, I mean, I hope it doesn't cut into the pick and run fights as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're going to punish a guy and say, okay, if you're going to lose one fight, you're done. If that comes into the into UFC and mixed martial arts, that's going to really hurt the sport.
Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree. Well, we're going to be taking a look at the local scene as well as tackling some of your questions. That's coming up next on 101sports.com.